Roblox Tower Defense Simulator is a game heavily inspired by the first tower defense game on Roblox known as Tower Battles. It has a similar aspect of placing towers to defeat a certain boss at the end of the waves. But this tower defense game is not your normal one. In the beta days, it was just considered as a school project and quickly evolved into its own game along the months of its release. But in these months, a new feature arrived to the game, and this feature was the Events feature. Events are a limited time mode which consists of new enemies, new maps, and most importantly and most of the time, an event tower. And along the years, the game has received numerous updates, bringing the game to average tens of thousands of players each day, with the game having a total of 2.5 billion visits. But the game unfortunately has a not so great past with one particular update, as TDS released one of the most catastrophic and hated updates in the entire game's history, with players excited for this long-awaited update to drop. This update brought in over 40,000 different unique players, and once the update dropped, one of the worst updates was brought to fruition. I'm speaking of last year's 2022 Duck Hunt event. Now all of this started in January 2020. A bunch of updates have just been released, and it brought rise to the long-awaited Spring 2020 event. Now to find the earliest trace of the Spring 2020 event, which happens to be when it first released, we have to go back to March 2020. Where in March 2020, we have one leak being the official Spring 22 Roblox Egg Hunt. This was a yearly event which had a handful of games make special challenges to achieve a special egg for the game, and TDS happened to be in the roster for this event. But on April 6th, the Spring 2020 event was released, spiraling the game to over 15,000 different unique players. Now this event was special in two ways, since it technically had two different modes, one for the egg hunt, and one for the swimmer tower. The event was overall well received in the community due to all the new things that the event brought to the game. And one of those new things was Eggy Island, a map exclusively made for the Spring 2020 event, bringing 8 new enemies to the game, one of which was the Ducky Doom enemy. The Ducky Doom is an enemy which made the event a living hell for players, but it was still beatable. Another thing added to this update was the Bunny Skin Crate. A skin crate which consisted of 10 skins, which were all bunny themed and were all pretty good. But on May 26, 2020, the event ended leading to the end of the Spring 2020 event, but instead leading to a path of the next event, aka the Duck Hunt event. Now the first segment leak for the Duck Hunt 2022 event is the ND system update, showcasing a bunch of new enemies spawning at the same time, meaning this update was actually in preparation for the new system for the Duck Hunt event called Defend the Center. But the next leak for this event arose on April 5th, 2022, showcasing a simple picture with a bunch of ducks simply titled Quack. But only a day later, another leak was posted to the TDS Twitter titled Drippy, showcasing a parody of the Among Drip meme, but with just ducks. And for the next 2 days, the TDS account kept leaking enemies for the next event until April 13th, where it showed a silhouette of a tower in the barnyard lobby. But only a day later, it was surprisingly revealed to be the years in the making engineered tower, which would finally be released in the Spring 2022 update. Finally, for the last leak, on April 17th, 2022, the Duck Hunt event trailer was published onto the Tower Defense Simulator YouTube channel, showcasing a handful of new towers and enemies, including the new Engineer Tower and Ducky Doom enemy. But finally, at 12 PM EST, the update was finally released, and it seems like all good at first. The event is good, the new lobby is amazing, until one thing gets noticed. You can't get an event tower from this event, but in place of that quote-unquote event tower for the event is the newly released Engineer costing 4,500 gems to purchase in the shop. And when I say the community hated it, I mean they really hated it. The community absolutely went monkey mode and went all crazy just because they didn't get an event tower from the event. But it wasn't just about that. It was also about the fact that it took over 24 hours just to get the Engineer Tower. Now for me, at this time I did not really care and just straight up bought gems for the Engineer. But for other people, 24 hours is a long time, especially for a tower, and all you do in that time is just die over and over again. And especially after the fact that the Engineer was now the best tower in the game. It was now a must-need tower for hardcore mode, which made the update even more hated, which made people just hate this update in general, which made the TDS Discord go crazy with people somewhat protesting about this update. But this is nothing compared to when players found out that all the Engineer sentries could literally be killed in seconds, rendering the tower useless. Meaning for 4,500 gems, you got the best tower in the game, with the exception of the super fall, which could make all your DPS vanish in a matter of a second. Not to mention, it took 5 full days for this update to the Engineer to release, meaning for a solid 5 days, the community ranted over these things honestly for a justified reason. I mean, the developers did kinda help by reducing the Void Reader's health to 1.2 million and increasing the hardcore win gem pool, but that still was. Players were infuriated at this and couldn't stand the fact that the update was honestly, I'm gonna say it, kinda trash. But at least the developers did notice it and do something about it, which I can actually respect. But moving on to my next point. the duck hunt mode. This mode was one of the most unique things added to TDS, but it still had a lot of flaws. One being that the mode was based on RNG. All enemies instead of being spawned in a set way, spawned in a random way, which means every single enemy could theoretically spawn at the same time in the matter of 5 seconds. Now if you think that's stupid, remember that you get money from waiting. And because of this, if all enemies spawn at the same time, it gives you no time to gain money, ultimately dooming you for losing. But the thing ultimately dooming this mode was the last wave, which was honestly just a huge RNG fest. For example, the boss for this mode damages you by ramming to your base from the ability it gets, but this is also RNG based, meaning that you would not only need to get good RNG, but also a lot of HP to tank the abilities. But in general, this update kinda just ruined the TDS community for a solid 6 days until it was kinda resolved with the hardcore mode buff and the Engine Essential rework. But overall, I think this update was supposed to be on par with the worst update in TDS known as the hardcore mode update. But unlike that update, the issues weren't really that huge and were fairly minor. But in conclusion, I think this update could have been better if there was just a fix on the engine and gem inflation sooner. It could have just been so much better. But hey, what do you think is the worst update in TDS? Also, if this video gets 100 likes, then I'll do a video going with the third most hated update being the Violent Night update. But for now, I'll see you later. Peace.